Hey everyone, this week we are going to be talking about our huge student loan debt. It's bigly.
Yeah.
Like, it's really big. It's
Bigly?
bigly. $350,000 in student loans, you guys. So it is big and it's a heavy burden. So we're going to be talking about, how we got to that position, why it's still hanging around when we're almost 50 years old, and we're going to be talking about our unconventional plan to get rid of our student loans, and it's not going to be what you think. So stick around for about 6 seconds and we'll be right back. Hey everyone, I'm Wendy, and this is my better half,
Curtis.
And together we are the House of F.I.R.E, and we are all about helping moms and dads save more money, spend less, dump debt, budget better, all on the road to financial independence. So if you know anything about our story, you know that about 3 years ago we were in $1 million worth of debt, that we have gotten rid of $650,000 of that, which $550,000 of it was our home, and the rest of it was consumer debt. And so all we have left are these student loans that have been hanging around in our lives
For years.
for a really long time. So we're going to talk today about, how we got in this position. So what we may not have talked about a whole lot is the backstory, like how did that happen? What were our financial backgrounds, kind of that part of our story, and then how did we get all these student loans and why are they not paid off now? So I thought it would be good to do a deep dive into that, because I know that we're not alone in this situation. No. I think student loan debt is kind of one of the biggest pressing concerns for new grads, for professionals, because it is so expensive to go to school nowadays, and so people are borrowing more than ever before. So we hope that this is a resource for all of you. So neither one of us, I think, had any real financial knowledge about money before getting married.
No, we just wanted to get our degrees and try to earn as much money as we could.
Right. And, both of our parents, Curt was raised by a single mom who was working really, really hard trying to support her family. And my family, my mom and my dad both grew up in poverty, and my dad got the GI Bill and was really just working to get them into the middle class, and we always lived paycheck to paycheck. And that was really just the concern, was surviving and providing for your family. So there really weren't those money conversations. I heard a lot, no, we can't afford that. You hear that too? A lot of times, yes. Yeah. And a lot of times I just even knew not to ask, because I just knew we didn't have the money for it. Yeah,
we were mainly worried about having a meal and clothes and electricity.
Right. Right. So as you can imagine, one of the things I think, and it's not uncommon for our generation, is that we were worried about going to school, because going to school was going to be our way out.
Yes.
And an education was a way out. And so it was almost this mentality of go to school at all costs. And I know that for you, at least, you started out really good, right?
Yeah.
You got a scholarship?
Yeah, I got a scholarship to play football. Yeah, I ended up, playing football at the community college. After I did my 2 years there, I got a scholarship to go to Nevada, Reno, and finished up playing football there.
But that's not all the story. Like, you got injured, right?
Yeah, I got injured
and ended that, right?
Yeah.
And we met basically right as that was happening. And I think he was almost basically in a place where he didn't know if he was going to continue going to school or not.
Yeah.
And just to shorten the story, we met. We got pregnant with our daughter.
Yes.
About halfway into the relationship, and we decided to get married. And from there, it was really Curt just took on the responsibility of providing for our family. the decision was made that I was going to finish my education
First.
and go to law school. And so he supported us while we did that. And so he put his education on hold for a while. I finished law school, and it was still that same thing. It was, I got to finish school. I got to get through law school. I got to do it by any means necessary, because once I get to this point of graduating for law school, then I could take over the financial burden, and he could finish school, which is what we did, but we were still financing it all.
Yeah, and then at that time, once I went back to school, you know, then you're looking at the pay scales, and I wanted to be a teacher, and to have a better salary, you have to move over on the pay scale. So I ended up going back and getting my master's degree, etc. So that's where all of our student loan debt came from, is trying to move down on or move across and down on the pay scale.
Right, and I opted for a private college here in San Diego, California Western, and my tuition was not cheap.
Not at all.
It was not cheap. So all of that is to say that we financed our educations. I think there were times where we took out probably more than we needed to, which was a mistake. But also, part of that also, where there were periods where we were really, really struggling, and we did need that money just to survive. So all told, that's where the bulk, actually, that's where all of that comes from, is financing our educations. And we arrived there. We didn't have the whole $350,000 of it, because a lot of that now is interest, but certainly a good 90% of that is from both our undergraduate degrees and our graduate degrees. So we both got our education. We both then started with our careers, and I think the wake-up call for me was, I guess I imagined that I would graduate law school and I would be making six figures. Well, that's not reality. I graduated law school right after 9/11. So I went into the field where everybody was unemployed. It was just not a good time for anybody. So it took me a really long time to get a job, and once I did, it did not pay very much money. It only paid about $40,000. He was starting off as a brand new teacher, and so he wasn't making very much either, but we had done it. We had gotten to our careers, and so immediately I think we fell into that chasing the American dream of, okay, the next thing that we have to do is we have to buy a house, which we did. And we wanted the house to be nice, and we wanted our children to have a backyard to play in, so we needed the pool, so we financed a pool. And we both needed cars, so even though they weren't the greatest cars, they were still financed. So just this lifestyle creep happened, and so sometimes we would pay on our student loans, sometimes we wouldn't. If we got to a place where we were living too tightly, we'd put them in forbearance. And we did that for a long time.
Yeah, too long.
A long time. So about 13 years all total by the time we were 46. We had been pushing them off, and not paying enough on them for them to go down. And so they were at about $350,000 even 3 years ago when we found the financial independence community. So we found ourselves $46 million worth of debt. We started paying off stuff. We really cut our expenses, but we had adopted the boys, and I wanted to quit. And I wanted to be home with the kids, and I think that our family really needed that. But the big problem was we had all this debt. So we took care of that, but then we still have these student loans. So here we are, we have these student loans. What are we going to do with these student loans?
Well, we're going to pay the minimum on them.
Exactly. We're going to pay the minimums on them. Now, you might be wondering why we wouldn't attack our student loans as aggressively as we would our other loans. I think the big reason, at least for Curtis, is that because as a teacher, he qualifies for the Public Student Loan Forgiveness Program. And so if you are someone who works in public service, so either you're a teacher, a police officer, you work for the fire department, or any other public service, like nurses can be, depending on the way that the hospital runs itself, if it's a not-for-profit hospital. There's a ton of different jobs public defenders, tons of different jobs where if you pay your student loans, you're in the program, you pay them for 10 years, they're typically on a lower payment schedule. After 10 years, the balance is forgiven. So he's about 3 years into that, and so we're going to keep him in that and pay as little as possible on it, because at the end of that, it goes away. And his loans account for about $120,000 of the balance. And so, I mean, that's a lot of money.
Yeah, so that would leave us about
$230,000 left on mine. And so, how are we going to handle mine?
How are we going to handle yours?
So on those, we're paying the minimum payments for now because I'm not making very much money. And that is what makes the most sense to us while we're growing our investment property portfolio and growing my business. Now, it could mean that at a later date, we decide to just accelerate that payoff on those. But right now, what makes the most sense is to increase our investment income as much as possible, as quickly as possible. And it may be that it never makes financial sense to pay those off, because my thought is that if we can spend less money investing in a property that then pays for the student loan monthly payment, then that makes more financial sense. So if I can take $30,000 and put that into an investment property that then covers my student loan payment, I can just pay those for 20 years. I'm just cash flowing it through our tenants. Yeah. So that is what makes the most financial sense to me. We will reevaluate that at some point to make sure that still makes financial sense. But at least at this point in time, that is what makes the most financial sense to us. And we feel fairly confident in that we've run it through some of our financial mentors, and they see no issue with it either. So I feel pretty good about it, right?
Yes, it was. It was reassuring that knowing that what we're doing, our crazy path, is just it'll speed up our process, but just like we talked about on the other video, but it gives us the security knowing that if once we get to that point, we'll be able to pay on the student loan debt and not worry about it coming out of our income, and we'll still create those other income streams to keep us afloat.
Right, exactly. And so it's one other just example of how you don't always have to do things the traditional way. No. That if you really, and this is not a gamble either, like this is not something risky that we're doing. It's good to think outside of the box as long as it makes sense. And so we hope that encourages you and, encourages you to maybe think outside the box for yourself. If you find yourself in a situation like us where you just look at this student loan debt and go, I just don't know how we're ever going to get rid of it. And like us, you may decide that it doesn't make sense to do that. So, so when, if I asked you, do you think that our student loans were worth it? What do you think?
Well, up to a point they were, because it got us to a place where we have our careers, and not have our careers because we made that decision, together to have Wendy just stay at home and pursue other interests. And while I'm still in my profession in California, I'm at the top of my pay scale, so it helps us do it. So in my regards, I think that we made a good decision, about our education and where we're at right now. What do you think?
Well, I kind of view life as I don't really like to have a whole lot of regrets. I try to look at even a bad situation and say, okay, well, what did I learn from the situation? So while I can't say that that they were not worth it, there are definitely things that I would do differently, and that I'm encouraging our children to do differently. Yes. And that's, if you don't have to borrow, don't. Find other ways to pay for school. That traditional college is not necessarily the way for everyone to go. That there are other options like trade schools or going to the military. But I also would not have taken so long to start paying on them either. I think that had we to do it all over again, that, you know, maybe we would have been more disciplined early on and just paid them.
Yeah.
You know, the other option is that I could have stayed with the public defender's office and had them pay them off for me, but I just have to say, like, if we chose any of those routes, would it have led us to adopting our boys?
Yeah.
And would it have led us to the life that we have now?
Yeah.
Would it have led us to find the FIRE movement? And I just don't know that it would.
No.
So I can't say that they were not worth it, because we're here.
Yeah.
And our future is bright, and we've learned a lot. So.
Yeah.
All right, everybody. Well, that's all that we have for today. If you have liked this video, you like our videos, please subscribe. It's how YouTube knows that you like us and shows us to more people so we can spread our message. All right, everyone. Take care. Bye.
Bye.